Today we are talking about oil skimmers in relation to facilities maintenance. What is an oil skimmer? An oil skimmer is a mechanical device driven by a motor, can be a pneumatic motor, usually an electric motor, that skims the oil off a body of liquid, usually water or coolant. The tramp oil adheres to an oleophilic disc, drum, belt, tube, brush, rope, or mop. The collected oil is then squeegeed off the surface and collected in a bucket, drum, or tank to be reclaimed. Oil skimmers come in different sizes and made from different materials based on the specific application specifications and quantity of oil that is to be reclaimed. Oil skimmers are common in the metalworking industry, food production industry, oil spill cleanup industry, like out on the ocean, for example, coolant sumps, wash rack water sumps, etc. Floating weirs can also be utilized to skim tramp oil off the surface of a body of water. The term oleophilic simply means having a strong affinity for oils but not water. So the belt on a belt type oil skimmer will attract and hold on to oil, hydrocarbons, grease, etc., but it won't really hold on to water. And that means it's hydrophobic if it doesn't hold on to water. Tramp oil, also known as sump oils, are undesirable oils generated as a byproduct of an operation. Weirs is basically a skimmer that rises and falls with the level of the water. They usually have floats built into them to keep them on the surface of the water. They are positioned on the surface, and the oil and grease floating on top of the water will spill over the dam into the sump, bringing with it as little water as possible. So here's an example of a belt type oil skimmer. Some specs on this: 120 volt AC gear motor operates it at a very low RPM. The frame and the post and the body and the cover is all made out of mild carbon steel that's painted. Belt material options are pretty broad, from stainless steel belts to elastomer, poly belts, etc. And you can see as the belt goes around, there's wipers that wipe the oil or squeegee the oil off of the belt into a little drain trough, and then they go into a hose and into a waiting bucket to be collected. Picture on the right shows a wash rack trench that collects the dirty water, and this oil skimmer, as you can see, skims that oil and grease off the surface of the water in that trench. Here's another belt type oil skimmer design. This one has a perforated poly belt, and you can see there's an adjustable tension arm on the side with 2 bolts and 2 nuts. So as you move the arm farther down, it's going to put more tension on the belt. And on the drive pulley up at the motor, you can see there's little spikes in the center of that drive pulley that help that belt not slip and have positive traction as it goes around. Yet a third example of a belt type oil skimmer design, again driven by a gear motor and a chain. This one's chain drive. Now we get into tube type oil skimmers. This is one that I designed and built a few years back, and we use vinyl tubing as the oleophilic material for the tube. And so same idea, the drive pulley pulls the tube around, tube goes in the body of water, picks up the oil, brings it up, the oil is squeegeed off, oil drips into that oil catch pan, and into a waiting 5-gallon bucket to be recycled. I apologize for the video quality, but here's the oil skimmer
type oil skimmer
in action. And here is a disc type oil skimmer. Disc type oil skimmers are great for bodies of water or a tank where the water level stays fairly constant within a few inches. Obviously, if the water level is going to drop greatly in your tank, a disc type oil skimmer would not be appropriate, because eventually if the water level gets too low, the disc would be out of the water and not skimming off any oil. If the water level is going to rise and fall drastically, a belt type oil skimmer or tube type oil skimmer would be more advantageous. Tube type oil skimmers are also great for skimming oil inside of a confined space, like on let's say a coolant recovery tank on a metalworking piece of equipment. And here we have a drum type oil skimmer. And this one basically, the oil influent goes through that expanded metal debris screen to keep out any debris, that trash that's floating on the surface of the water. The drum rotates around, and the squeegee squeegees the tramp oil off of the drum and flows into a collection chamber. And when that collection chamber fills up, the float switch rises up, turns the pump on, sucks the oil out of the collection chamber. When the collection chamber empties, float switch floats back down and turns the pump off. Here we have an example of a mop or rope type oil skimmer. So again, similar idea. It slowly spins around, collects the oil off the surface of the water. It gets squeegeed off of the mop or the rope into a waiting collection tank. And then lastly, here we have a floating weir type oil skimmer. These will also be used out on the open ocean for spill cleanups. Also in the open ocean, they'll use absorbent pads or absorbent booms to help contain the oil, absorb the oil. But this here too has 3 floats, and you can see it just skims off that oil on the surface with little to no water. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave me a comment for future video topics you would like me to cover.